Hello, it is time to talk about chapters 11, 12, and 13. So let's look at what these chapters are. Chapter 11 is delivering your speech. Chapter 12 is using presentation aids. And chapter 13 is speaking to inform. Okay, so let's get started with that. Just so you know, chapter 10 in this book, using words well, speaker language and style, is not something I'm going to cover, but you do have a optional participation points quiz on it. So that would be your responsibility to read it in your book and take care of that quiz. Okay, so let's go on and talk about chapter 11, delivering your speech. And as always, please get yourself a paper and pen so you're making notes as you listen to me talk. And very soon, I'm going to hit the play button. You're going to lose my face there, and you're going to see an entire screen. So let's get started. I'm going to hide this and play. Okay, so let's get started. When we talk about the way we deliver our speeches, right? There are 4 different kinds of deliveries that I have here for you. One is a manuscript speech. The second one is a memorized speech. Number 3 is an impromptu speech. And number 4 is an extempo speech. Okay, extemporaneous. So let's start with our first one, which is manuscript speech. You know, when you have a whole fat book to, read out aloud to an audience, I mean, it could be, like a speech in a museum or something. That's a manuscript speech. So you're reading really a speech from a written book or a manuscript. And to be quite honest with you, it isn't something very interesting to do. You tend to do that because you have to get every word right. And it has a lot of information, a lot of unfamiliar information. And for those purposes, it kind of makes sense to read from a manuscript. So a manuscript speech, you have to figure out, where am I going to pause? What words am I going to emphasize on? So all of that stuff you would have to prep to get it right. You have to practice. And it's kind of hard to have eye contact in this kind of speech. However, it is important to make some kind of eye contact. And, not to speak too slow, not to speak too fast. I mean, you just use your normal speed and simple vocal variation as you would, reading anything. So you have to do that, but I do not want a manuscript speech for this particular class. The second one is a memorized speech. You'll see I have a little boy on that particular photo, right, on that slide. And it's because when we are little, they ask you to say something. You may have memorized something and you blurt out those 3 or 4 or 10 sentences and you're done. That is not what our class is all about. And you should absolutely not be delivering a memorized speech. In a memorized speech, you tend to speak like word for word, from memory. You use no notes. And of course, you can have like the most amazing eye contact with the audience, but it does sound very rehearsed, over rehearsed, sometimes very stiff, very formal. And then if you forget a part of your speech, you just go like, oh my God, now what? Like I can't remember this paragraph. And so I don't remember anything after this paragraph. It's a really, sort of scary situation, right? As a child, you may have done it. It isn't something you should be doing for for a class like this. So no memorized speech. Now you know what a memorized speech is. The third one that you see here is an impromptu speech. So an impromptu speech is, I just call you up on in front of the class, and I just give you a quick topic, right? Like White Christmas, or let's say the best day I ever had, or my favorite animal. I mean, it could be just anything, right? I give you a quick topic, and you have literally like 30 seconds to prepare, and then you just go out there and you just, you know, say something. And most times you don't really have any real quality time to prep for something. Maybe you just have a paper in front of you and you just kind of write down, two or three points, and then you just start talking. All right, so this kind of speech, there isn't really any advanced preparation. There is no logic in terms of the organization, but there isn't even any expectation that there would be. So I would say, if you have to do a speech like this, by the way, you have to do a speech like this in this class. But if you have to do a speech like this, you just go for it. You consider your audience, you know what they care about. You do a quick, like, okay, my intro, body, conclusion, quick organization. I'm out there just gonna talk, right? That's what an impromptu speech is. Okay. The last one here is an extempo speech. Now, this is the kind of speech you will be doing in class. And you do have to create a very good speech outline. You have to write it, right? Create it. And then you have to memorize parts of that speech outline. But you're absolutely not expected to basically use the exact wording, right? There's no real memorization of the exact sentences. Just an overall idea, right? So I would say this is what we would recommend in most situations, and you do need to practice quite a bit to excel at it. Okay, so let's then move on to the next section here, which is effective delivery. All right. Now, there are two theories that I'd like to introduce to you. Number one, listeners expect effective delivery, right? The nonverbal expectancy theory says that if the listener's expectations about communication are violated, then listeners feel less favorable toward the communicator. By this, it means, they're expecting a really great speech, but if you don't give them, a great speech, they're going to like you a little bit less. All right. So that's the nonverbal expectancy theory. The next theory there is the emotional contagion theory. This basically means that the people, the audience, they tend to catch the emotions of others. So if you as a speaker, you're starting to make these emotional connections with the listener, if you want them to feel happy, then you need to feel that same emotion so you can express it through your delivery, right? If you're happy or sad and your body language, is displaying that is the emotion that the audience is going to catch as well. So that theory is called the emotional contagion theory. People tend to catch the emotion of others. All right. So what are the different characteristics of a good delivery? All right. Of course, out of the 5, 4 of them are nonverbal. Your nonverbal speaks louder than the verbal message. All right. So we're talking about eye contact, gestures, movement and posture, facial expression. These are all nonverbal. We'll get into it a little bit more. And then there's the vocal delivery, which is the actual delivery of the message through voice. So let's talk about those 5. Okay, so we have eye contact, right? When you look at people, when you present any information, when you look at them, they start to believe that, you are a capable, trustworthy person, and they tend to remember the speech a little bit more. So when you are sharing information, please use your eye contact effectively. Look at people right from the beginning of the speech, establish that audience eye contact, look everywhere, right? Don't look at just one person and make them feel like weird and awkward, right? You want to look at everyone, front of the class, back of the class, sides of the class, and don't look over people's heads. You want to look at them, right? This is really important that you look at them. Build your ethos, and this is how you do that. So that's number 1. The second one is gestures. you want to use your gestures in some way, right? Like you want to feel like it's relaxed and, consistent, very natural movement. But, if it's too much movement, it kind of looks a little bit crazy. And of course, there are cultural expectations, right? In some cultures, like the Middle East, you see broad gestures, right? They're acceptable in some cultures. But you have too much of that. I mean, in America, it might look a little bit strange, right? So, of course, there's a lot of study, a lot of academic study on the use of nonverbals and how it's different between cultures. And I'm not going to get into that right now because this is a speech class, right? But um, adapt based on people in the audience, and very important to stay more relaxed and natural. The third one is movement and posture. You will start to notice that when you are delivering your speech and other people are watching you, that you're going to be, if you're shifting and stuff, like, people tend to notice that. So if you're constantly shifting between your two, feet, or you're playing with your hair, or, you know, something's going on which is kind of strange, like you play with your collar, or I don't know, keep pulling up your pants. I don't know, something weird like that, right? I mean, it's not something that you are consciously doing, but because of the nervousness and excitement, whatever it is that you're feeling, you tend to have some of these movements. So I would say be conscious of it. It takes time to start to realize and then to stop, all of these weird unconscious movements. But I would say not rather not move than do movement that's distractive, right? So it should make sense whatever movement you do. And in a real life situation, of course, if it's an online setup and you're doing an online recording like speech for me, that's different. But like if you are in a larger setup and, let's say in a post-COVID world, a lot of this stuff is possible. If you are in an environment where you're talking to an audience, well, try to get a little bit closer to the audience. Don't stand behind a podium all the time. When you maintain that contact, and you have great posture and you're closer, physically a little bit closer to your audience, like it just it feels real, it feels fresh, and it feels like it establishes that immediacy that we're talking about here. And of course, you want to have the right eye contact gestures, more relaxed gestures. Like too much of the hand movement and all of that also signifies that you're a little bit nervous, so just watch out for that. The fourth one is, of course, the facial expressions, right? So our face expresses so much thoughts, emotions, attitudes. So be conscious of it when you begin your speech. Think of the fact that you should be smiling, and that builds trust and comfort between the audience and you. So just something to think about. So let's go to vocal, right? Of course, I have President Obama here because I absolutely think he's a fantastic orator. But speak to be understood. So don't complicate what you have to say. Keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it straightforward. And then, of course, work on some of these little factors that you see here, like volume, pitch, rate, pause, articulation, right? So the volume is like, a louder voice or a softer voice. You want to be able to hear your speaker, right? As a listener, you want to hear your speaker. So be clear, like articulate, right? But also have a louder voice and not very high pitch because it's hard to understand sometimes. The rate at which you talk also matters. So if you're speaking really, 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 really fast, right? Some people might just kind of miss you, right? And if you're really slow, then some people are just you're going to lose them because they're going to just walk away like mentally from that. If you have a pause between two thoughts, it helps the listener because now they're able to distinguish, okay, thought one is over and we're moving on to thought two, right? So those kinds of things are important. And then, of course, there's the dialect, right? And we all have accents and dialects. I have a very beautiful South Asian accent. I mean, I grew up there, so that's my accent. The Canadians, instead of about, they would say about. The Texans, folks from Boston, everyone has this distinctive style, and be conscious of yours. Hold on to it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but definitely be conscious of that. Okay. So, yeah, so speak to be understood. And of course, we've talked about 4 nonverbal, and this one to be the verbal aspect of delivery. Let's talk a little bit about microphones, right? So there are different kinds of microphones that are out there. In a class, you may not need it, but in a formal lecture, you will. So, of course, there is what we call a lavalier microphone, right? Which is basically something you clip to your clothes, right? Or something like, it's basically like it could be a cord that's worn around the neck, or it's just a little clip mic, right? That you just stick to your shirt and it picks up your sound. Then there is the boom microphone, right? So often, there is no mic in front of the speaker, but as the speaker moves, the mic on the top kind of follows the speaker as well, and that's what we call a boom microphone. Then there's the stationary microphone, which we all know, right? It's right in front of the speaker, or it could be on the podium. It could be sitting on a desk, or it could be, the tall one on the floor, right? And that is just basically stationary, stays there, and the speaker would stand right in front of it and deliver the lecture or whatever, right? So 3 different kinds of microphones: lavalier, boom, stationary. Okay, also one thing to know is some of the mics are one directional, so it only pick up sound from the speaker. Some of them are multi-directional, so it would pick up sound from pretty much everywhere, left, right, from the audience, all of it. And of course, different mics are used for different reasons, right? Which is something you should know. Okay. I think this particular next slide talks about personal appearance during delivery. And I will tell you that it does matter. It matters how you look, how you dress, how you're perceived by others who are listening to you. It impacts really how the audience responds to your message. Okay, so if you look, you're not playing the part, you don't look the part, you sort of violate the audience's expectations, and they may not take you very seriously. Or, if you're trying to persuade someone and you're not dressed the part, people may not be less persuaded. Okay. You see a lot of the techie folks, like the Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates and Tim Cooks and, all these guys, they tend to dress more casually. Zuckerberg, for example, I've seen him in all black, just like Steve Jobs. And I think they dress casual, like black t-shirt, black jeans. Like that's what I've seen them kind of wear. And it's kind of shows a very casual leadership style. And, that's kind of what they convey when they dress like that. You can choose how you would like to be. And there are no expectations to be formally dressed. But see the crowd that you're speaking with and then dress accordingly. All right. Also, I would say do not wear t-shirts that have a specific sign that could be upsetting to others, or certain images or ads or whatever that don't really go with the speech topic. So just think a little bit about it. It's very psychological. It's a very unconscious thing, but it's just something to keep in mind.